Hi, this video lecture is a continuation of the topic solving for the inverse Laplace transforms involving partial fractions. Let me share to you the idea of dealing with partial fractions and finding for the inverse Laplace transform. We know that partial fraction is a name given to an algebraic technique of writing a quotient of polynomials in simpler form. Once it has been written into its simplest form, or this rational expression has been written into its simpler form, the idea is that we can be able to recognize that given partial fraction into the standard Laplace transform. So thus helping us or aiding us to determine its inverse transform. This technique has already been encountered in elementary calculus where it enables us to write quotients in ways whose integrals are easier to recognize. So a fraction of the form, so this is the rational expression in which m and n are positive integers. We call this the algebraic fraction or rational algebraic fraction or rational expression basically. Now a few notes with this rational expression. So when the numerator is of lower degree than the denominator, we call it the proper rational fraction or proper rational function. Okay, again, numerator is of lower degree than the denominator. We call it proper rational fraction. And when the numerator is higher degree than the denominator, we call it improper rational fraction. So the same idea with, fractions. It happened lang na yung given natin algebraic functions. Yung nasa numerator mo are polynomials or polynomial, and in the denominator is also a polynomial. That's why it's called rational expression or rational algebraic fraction or function. So improper siya. Pag improper, mataas yung value ng numerator compared to the denominator. Proper kapag yung numerator mo has a lower degree compared to your denominator. Say for instance, first degree yung numerator mo and then your denominator is of second degree or quadratic siya. So it's called proper rational function or fraction. Function ang sinasabi ko kasi parang redundant na kasi pag sinabing rational fraction. Kasi the term na rational means ratio. So may numerator ka, tapos may denominator ka. Ayan. So how do we convert or put improper fraction? Kasi we need to simplify that rational expression. So an improper fraction or improper rational expression can be converted into a proper rational fraction by simple division. Now to continue, since the idea here is to make that rational expression be recognizable into standard forms na Laplace transform so that we can be able to find its inverse transform. Kaya it is important that we know how to put the given rational fraction into its equivalent partial fractions. So to resolve a given fraction into partial fractions, we factorize or first factorize the denominator into real factors. And these will be either linear or quadratic. Pag sinabing linear, yung degree ng x doon or ng variable involved is 1. Or in this case, since we are given with f of s, so yung degree ni s is 1. Quadratic naman if the degree is 2 or the highest degree that you can see in the given polynomial. And some factors na pwedeng mag-repeat. So from algebra, it is known that a proper rational fraction can be resolved into a sum of partial fractions such that we have these four cases. First is to a non-repeated or distinct linear factor that you can see in the denominator. It corresponds to a partial fraction of the form a over that distinct factor, which is s minus a. If there are two distinct factors like s minus a times s minus b or s plus b, then you simply add these partial fractions like a over s minus a plus b over s minus b or whatever that factor is, or basta distinct na linear factor. Kung tatlong distinct factors, so pag-addin mo yung tatlong partial fractions, non-repeated. So case number 2, to a repeated linear factor, say for instance, s minus a is the factor raised to r, where r is an integer. Okay, syempre positive kung ilang repetitions or ilang beses nag-repeat itong factor na to, that you can see in the denominator. Then the corresponding sum yan, is of this form. Okay, say for instance, the r here is 3. So tatlong partial fractions yung pinag-add natin. So a over s minus a, tandaan na the denominator here is raised to 1 plus b over s minus a squared plus c over s minus a cubed. Yan kapag tatlong repetitions. So we are looking at the denominator, the factors in the denominator. And case number 3, to a non-repeated quadratic factor like s squared plus as plus b, so quadratic because the degree of the polynomial is 2. That you can see in the denominator, so it corresponds to a partial fraction of the form yan, a times s plus b. So take note of these constants na nasa numerator mo, naka uppercase letter siya. So ito yung kailangan na i-determine natin, yung constants na to. Over s squared plus as plus b, or simply you can differentiate the denominator multiplying it to the first term, yung constant na to. So pwedeng 2s times a times this uppercase letter. And finally, to a repeated quadratic factor. So if this quadratic factor in the denominator has repeated, maybe twice or thrice, this is how you write the corresponding sum of the partial fractions. Say for instance, nag-repeat yung s squared plus as plus b ng dalawang beses in the denominator, so you can actually have yan, 4 na constants na involve. Okay, as plus b over s squared plus as plus b plus c s plus d all over the square of the quadratic factor. Kung 4 yung constants, 4 na partial fractions. Kung dalawang factors, dalawang partial fractions na pinag-add natin. Clear? Or in English, baka yung mga viewers tayo dito or may classmates kayo na foreigner. So if there are 2 factors in the denominator, so you have 2 constants or 2 partial fractions involved that are being added. If there are 3 factors in the denominator, so 3 constants, 3 partial fractions. The idea, once that we have put the given rational expression into its corresponding sum of partial fractions, then we determine the unknown constants, uppercase letters A, B, C, and so on. So once that we have determined this, then we can be able to see the transform or the inverse transform, referring to its standard, Laplace transform. Okay, note that to determine the quadratic factor in the denominator of a proper rational fraction or function, we can use or solve for the discriminant of this quadratic factor, s squared plus as plus b, such that if the square root of a squared minus 4b is less than 0, then the given quadratic factor is not factorable and hindi siya quadratic factor. So take note, if you can be able to factor this given polynomial, then it is not a quadratic expression or function. Yung s squared minus 2s plus 1. Yeah, it seems that you can see, okay, quadratic to. But it's actually not, because you can be able to factor it. The factor of that is s minus 1 squared. Okay, so in all other cases, you can equate the given fraction or function to a sum of a suitable partial fractions in accordance with these rules. And then the next step is we multiply both sides by the denominator of the given fraction and equate the coefficients of like powers. If you recall in integral calculus, yun yung ginagawa natin, or we substitute convenient numerical values of s on both sides as we are dealing with f of s. Our given here is f of s, and we are to find for f of t, or its inverse transform. Okay, first example. Find the inverse transform of 2s squared minus 6s plus 5 all over s cubed minus 6s squared plus 11s minus 6. I'll be writing the given problem. The given problem is finding for the inverse transform of 2s squared minus 6s plus 5 all over s cubed minus 6s squared plus 11s minus 6. Take a look at the given rational expression. Diba medyo complicated siya because we cannot be able to recognize in here the standard form, yung pinakita ko sa inyo na formula for its inverse transform. So what we will do is to put this rational expression or function into the sum of partial fractions. So decomposing it into partial fractions. Now we isolate this first and write its equivalent partial fraction. So the first thing that we need to do is to factor the denominator so that we will know if the factors in the denominator are distinct, repeated, or quadratic. It involves quadratic. So as you can see, the degree of the denominator is 3. And for your numerator, it's 2. So this is a proper function or proper rational fraction because of, the idea that the degree of the numerator is lower than the denominator. Now, the next step is to factor this s cubed minus 6s squared plus 11s minus 6. We have several techniques in doing factoring. In this case, since it's 3, we can use synthetic division. So by synthetic division. So whatever is applicable. In this case, I cannot be able to use factoring by grouping. That's why I have utilized synthetic division. So firstly, I am going to write, okay, I'm involved na variables dito. So may s cubed, s squared, s, and constant or s raised to 0. Then I will be writing the coefficients. Just a recall of, doing synthetic division. So 1 yung coefficient ni s cubed. For s squared, you have minus 6. For s, you have 11. For the constant, you have minus 6. And in here, you have to write here, or the possible root. Division to. So start with the basic, or the least number. So we start with 1. So this technique is actually trial and error. So bring down 1. So 1 times 1, you have 1. Negative 6 plus 1 is negative 5. Negative 5 times 1 is negative 5. 11 minus 5 is positive 6. 6 times 1 is positive 6. And then the last column here should be 0 yung result. So if this is satisfied na yung last column is 0, then 1 is the root of this given polynomial. I can continue. So itong 1 na to, the resulting or the result here that you can see are the coefficients of, ito nag-reduce na siya, di ba? So maging s squared na quadratic na to. So think again of another possible na root. So you try 2. This time, we can bring down 1. Yeah, 1 times 2 is 2. Negative 5, wait lang. Yeah, bring down 1. 1 times 2 is 2. Negative 5 plus 2 is negative 3. Negative 3 times 2 is negative 6. 6 minus 6 is 0. So ayan na siya. Here, we can say that this is one of the roots na. So s is equal to 1. Or if you equate that into 0, so this is s minus 1 equal to 0. The next root naman, this is s is equal to 2. Or this is s minus 2 equal to 0. And itong last part na to, or pagdating dito sa second na row, you can actually, or itong part na to, pwede mo na siyang i-factor by inspection. So ang ginawa ko is I continued doing division. So this one means that S, yan, coefficient ni S, tapos yung constant mo is minus 3. Yan, isa na yan sa mga factors equal to 0. Then, we can rewrite now the corresponding partial fraction. So observing the factors, S minus 1, S minus 2, and S minus 3, and these are non-repeated or distinct na factors. So the equivalent partial fractions, the sum of partial fractions is A for the first factor, which is S minus 1. So A over S minus 1 plus B over S minus 2 plus C over S minus 3. So I'll rewrite again the given rational expression because the next step will be finding for the constants. The equivalent partial fractions or the sum of partial fraction is A over S minus 1 plus B over S minus 2 plus C over S minus 3. The next step is to multiply the entire equation by these factors. Yan, both sides of the equation. So ano ba yung mga factors na to? Siyempre yung S minus 1, S minus 2 times S minus 3. Again, our idea here of multiplying both sides of the equation is to help us in finding for the constants A, B, and C. So the left-hand side of the equation will become 2s squared minus 6s plus 5 equals, on your right-hand side, so A over S minus 1 times these factors, makancel yung S minus 1. So the first term will be A times S minus 2 times S minus 3. And for the second term, so B over S minus 2 multiplied by these factors, we can cancel S minus 2. That's why we have second term B times S minus 1 times S minus 3. And for the last term, C, cancel yung S minus 3. So this will be S minus 1 times S minus 2. So the idea in finding for the constants A, B, and C, we can assign values or we can equate the coefficients of, S squared, S, and the constant. But in this case, since distinct yung factors, we can assign values of S, eliminating, two of the terms here. So ito yung sinasabi ko. So if we assign when S is equal to, since distinct siya, so how do we solve for A? Now, take a look at the second and last term. Ano yung common sa kanila? What is the common factor? There is S minus 1. So if we assign S equal to positive 1, ma-0, di ba yung itong factor na to? So if S is equal to 1, then this will be 0. 1 minus 1 is 0. 1 minus 1 is 0. So we have now the resulting equation. 2 times 1 squared is 2 minus 6 times 1. And this is negative 4. Negative 4 plus 5 is positive 1. Yung nasa left side ng equation mo. Here, so you have 1 minus 2 is negative 1. Dito naman, 1 minus 3 is negative 2. Negative 2 times negative 1 is positive 2. So this will be 2a. Again, so this will be 1 minus 1 is 0. So 0 times kung ano yung value nito, 0 pa din yung term na yan. So plus 0. The third term is 0 then. Thus, we have the value of a equal to 1/2. So we have now the value of constant a. The next step is to find for b. Take a look at first and third term. Ano yung common sa kanila? s minus 2. Tandaan na this is for distinct factors only. So, pwedeng combination naman eh. You can use assigning values of s or equating coefficients. To eliminate first and third term, since common si s minus 2, so we assign s equal to positive 2 para ma-zero yung first and third term. So here we have s times 2 squared, so that is 4 times 2 is 8. 8 minus 6 times 2. 6 times 2 is 12, so 8 minus 12 is negative 4. Negative 4 plus 5 is equal to 1. So 1 is equal to 0 yung first term plus second term natin. This will be 2 minus 1 is 1. 2 minus 3 is negative 1. So negative 1. So negative 1 times b. It's negative b. And for the last term, we have 0. Kasi 2 minus 2 is 0. Then we have b equal to, transpose mo lang to para maging positive si b. So b is equal to negative 1. So we have here a and b, check. Lastly, solving for the constant c. Ano yung common sa first and second term? You have s minus 3. So you assign when s is equal to positive 3. So here, 3 squared is 9. 9 times 2 is 18 minus 6 times 3 is 18. 18 minus 18 is 0 plus 5. So you have 5 here sa left side ng equation mo. First term, so 3 minus 3 is 0. So 0 yung first term. Second term, 0 din siya. And for the last term, you have 3 minus 1 is 2. And 3 minus 2 is 1. So 2 times 1 is 2 times c. So that is plus 2c. So the value of c is equal to 5 over 2. Now we have the constants. 1/2, negative 1, tsaka 5/2. Okay, so the idea now is to substitute or to put the value of the constants. Again, I'll be rewriting the given problem. So medyo mahaba siya. So f of s na lang gamitin ko. So the inverse transform of f of s is equal to the corresponding, I'll be writing now the equivalent or the sum of the partial fractions. A over s minus 1, the value of a is 1/2, right? So 1/2 over s minus 1 plus b over s minus 2. What's the value of b? Negative 1 over s minus 2 plus the value of c is 5 over 2 over s minus 3. As you can see, diba? In its simplest form na yung ating rational expression. So we can determine the inverse transform of each term. So first term, you have constant, diba, yung 1/2. So if you put that before the operator, inverse of 1 over s minus 1. And then you have minus, you put negative 1 before. So negative inverse of 1 over s minus 2. And finally, you have 5 over 2 inverse of 1 over s minus 3. And these transforms are recognizable na into the standard form. So we have first term 1/2. So first shifting, ito yung result ng first shifting property. So you have the exponential there. Your a is 1. So this is e raised to t. Second term is minus e raised to 2t. And the last term will be 5/2 e raised to 3t, positive 3t. So now this is your answer, the inverse transform of f or f of t. And the inverse transform of f of s or f of t is equal to 1/2 e raised to t minus e raised to 2t plus 5/2 e raised to 3t. our next problem. Let's try to solve another one. Problem number 2. Find the inverse transform of 4s plus 5 over s minus 1 squared times s plus 2. So as you can see, naka-factored form na yung denominator natin. So in that way, mas madali natin siyang ma-distinguish kung repeated ba or non-repeated or quadratic. In this case, you have 3 factors. So 2 of the factors has repeated. And so s minus 1 squared times s plus 2. If you combine them, mas mataas yung degree ng denominator compared to your numerator. So this is proper rational fraction. Now isolating first the rational expression. So we have 4s plus 5 all over s minus 1 squared times s plus 2. The equivalent partial fraction is, ayan, nag-repeat, di ba yung s minus 1? So you have a over s minus 1 plus b over s minus 1 squared. And distinct yung isang factor. So plus c over s plus 2. This is how you write the sum of the partial fractions for this given rational expression or f of s. Now, the next step is to multiply the entire equation by the factors. And s minus 1 squared times s plus 2. Now we have 4s plus 5 in the left-hand side of the equation equal to, sa first term, you have a s minus over s minus 1. So makancel yung isang s minus 1. That's why we have s minus 1 times s plus 2. Okay, so plus b times, cancel yung s minus 1 squared. So this will be s plus 2. For the third term, cancel yung s plus 2. So we have c and s minus 1 squared. Now the next step is to find for the value of the constants a, b, and c. So you can do combination ng you assign values and then you equate coefficients. So in this case, we can be able to find for the value of c since common yung s plus 2, right? Dito sa first and second term. So if we assign when s is equal to, paano naman 0 to? So negative 2. Right? So negative 2. So negative 2 times 4 is negative 8. Negative 8 plus 5 is negative 3. So ito yung nasa left-hand side ng equation mo. First term is 0. Second term is 0. So negative 2 minus 1 is negative 3. Negative 3 squared is positive 9. So this will be plus 9c. That's why, and dividing both sides by 9. So we have c equal to negative 3 over 9. Or you simplify, this is negative 1/3. That's the value of c. Now, common din yung s minus 1 sa first and last term. So you assign s equal to positive 1. 4 times 1 is 4. 4 plus 5 is 9. Here, 0 yung first term. Second term, you have 3. So plus 3b. And here you have 0 yung last term. That's why we have 9 divided by 3 is, so c, letter, or the constant b is equal to 3. To solve for the value of a, yan, kapag kinumbine natin to, so you will have degree 2. So pwede tayo mag-equate ng coefficients. So by equating coefficients of, ano yung common sa kanila? s squared. Sa left-hand side, wala kang s squared, so you put 0. Sa first term, di ba, s times s is s squared. So times a, you have a s squared. So the coefficient is a. Second term, wala kang s squared, so just plus 0. Third term, if you expand this, you have s squared times c. Yan. So plus c. A is equal to negative of c. Or this is negative times negative 1/3. So the value of a is positive 1/3. So we have constants a equal to 1/3, b is 3, c is negative 1/3. Now we write the inverse transform of f of s, yung given na function kanina. So pwedeng ito na lang gamitin natin. Is equal to the sum of the partial fractions. Our a is, yung value na a, 1/3. Yan, s minus 1 plus the value of b is 3, right? So 3 over s minus 1 squared. And then the value of c is negative 1/3 over s plus 2. For first term, so the resulting expression here inside the operator, recognizable na siya dun sa mga standard forms natin. So you have 1/3 inverse transform of 1 over s minus 1 plus 3. So laging ilagay yung constant before the operator. 1 over s minus 1 squared minus 1/3 inverse of 1 over s plus 2. First term natin, first shifting lang to. So 1/3 e raised to at. Our a is 1, so e raised to t. And second term natin, since yung denominator dito is raised to power of 2, so this is first shifting ng t. N plus 1. Our n is 1. So 1 factorial. So 1 factorial is equal to 1. Same lang din naman yun, 1. Divide by 1 factorial. Same lang din, lang na bago. So you can actually remove that one. Okay lang din, kahit wala ng 1 factorial. So the answer here is plus 3 t e raised to t. And for the last term, we have minus 1/3 e raised to negative 2t. So this is now our final answer. F of t is equal to 1/3 e raised to t plus 3t e raised to t minus 1/3 e raised to negative 2t. Okay, now for your seat work, I'll be writing here. If you have taken down notes, yung quadratic kanina na involved, so yun yung magiging seat work nyo. Umpisahan ko na lang para at least familiar na kayo dun sa mismo equivalent na partial fraction. So you are to find for the inverse of ayan, so may quadratic ka na factor sa denominator. So paano natin isusulat yung kanyang partial fraction? 5s plus 3 all over s minus 1. Tandaan na maging quadratic siya kapag hindi na kayang i-factor. Ito naka-factored form na, so no worries. 2s plus 5. So for the first or distinct factor, so a, ilan yung constants natin dito? S times s squared. So s cubed, no? Degree 3. Tatlong partial fractions, tatlong constants yung involved. So the first term is a over s minus 1 plus itong quadratic, dalawa yan yung constants na involved. So, continue mo lang yung letter. So, B, pwedeng mag-interchange yan. Unahin mo na yung quadratic or pwedeng mauna tong distinct. B times S. Or ang gagawin lang natin, pwedeng i-differentiate natin yung denominator nito. So, pwedeng 2S plus 2 plus C. Itong dalawang huling terms na to, same lang yung kanang denominator S squared plus 2S plus 5. Or yung kanina dun sa form na nabanggit ko, pwedeng isulat siya sa ganitong form B S plus C over S squared plus 2S plus 5.